Good morning, students. Now we shall continue with the topic on phonetics. Now, in our last class, we started with phonetics, and I introduced you all with the background of the lesson, and we are going to continue. But before we continue, I'll just give you an overview of what we already covered in the last class, so that you can recapitulate and follow what is being taught in the lecture today. So phonetics, I told you, is a branch of linguistic studies. That is a study which is dealing with the scientific approach to learn language, to study language. And phonetics is that branch which is dealing with the sound system of the language, and it is mainly focusing on the production, transmission, and the reception of sounds. We have seen that the fundamental requirement in order to produce speech sounds is air, and the manner in which the air is modulated or modified into speech sounds with the help of different organs is called airstream mechanism. That is the flow of air from the body to the outside, and this mechanism in which the air is changed into sounds with the help of different organs, that mechanism is called airstream mechanism. And we have seen that based on two categories, we have several classifications of the types of airstream mechanism. Based on the direction of flow, we have two types. When the airstream is pushed out, the airstream mechanism is called aggressive, and when the airstream is drawn in, the airstream mechanism is called ingressive. This is based on the direction. Outward means aggressive, inward means ingressive. And based on the initiator or the organ which starts the mechanism, we have three types, that is pulmonic, glottalic, and velaric. Pulmonic is the type where lung initiates the airstream mechanism. Glottalic is the type where the glottis initiates the airstream mechanism, or the air which is in the pharynx, because of which it is also called pharyngeal airstream mechanism. And velaric is when the velum initiates the mechanism, or the soft palate. And based on these types, we have seen that each category can be both ingressive and aggressive. Pulmonic aggressive is where air is pushed out. Pulmonic ingressive is when air is drawn in. And mostly human speech follows pulmonic aggressive airstream mechanism, because whenever we speak, we are using the air which is coming from the lungs, and secondly, it is drawn out, it is pushed out. Therefore, pulmonic aggressive. Pulmonic ingressive is used only for during snoring and yawning. It makes sound. That sound is produced by pulmonic ingressive airstream mechanism. In case of glottalic aggressive airstream mechanism, air is pushed out, and which is not used in any language, and glottalic ingressive is used only in case of Sindhi language. And velaric airstream mechanism, again, aggressive is not used in any language, but ingressive is used in some African languages like Zulu. So we have done in our last class this much. That is, what do we mean by phonetics, the background, how it came to be studied as a field of scientific research, and thereafter what we mean by airstream mechanism and its types. Today we are going to start with the organs of speech. Now these are, if you notice the picture carefully, so many organs of speech are involved when we are speaking. As I told you, that airstream mechanism is the manner in which the air which is coming from the lungs, so definitely from the lungs the air is coming with through the trachea with the, and it is during this journey that the air encounters different organs in the path. And in this passage, as it encounters different kinds of organs, the airstream is modified, and as a result different kinds of sounds are produced. Now if you notice at the bottom, where the trachea, that is the windpipe through which the air is coming upwards, first it encounters the glottis. The glottis is that opening between the two vocal folds. Now sometimes the vocal folds may be loose, sometimes the vocal folds may be kept close together, and the opening may be shut. So based on that, different kinds of sounds are produced. We will see to that later. And that region is called the larynx, which is also the voice box. As I was telling you last class, that while speaking, if you hold the throat, if you touch the throat with the help of your fingers, you will be able to notice the vibration of the voice box. And that will indicate that the air is passing through, making the vocal folds vibrate. And as a result of the vibration, sound is produced. Now, as it comes upward, if you notice the path, it goes upwards and it enters the pharyngeal cavity. Once it leaves the glottis and goes further up, it enters the pharyngeal cavity, because that portion is called the pharynx. Okay, now from the pharynx, if you notice the path upward, the pharynx gets divided into two passages. One, when the air leads to the mouth. The other, it goes further up and reaches the nasal cavity, that is towards the nose. Now, there are many kinds of sounds where the nose also plays an important role. That is, nasal sounds are produced. When, suppose, let me give an example. When we are saying the word sing, S-I-N-G, the initial sound S is a consonant sound. So that comes out of the mouth, that is reaching the oral cavity, and it is coming out of the mouth. But the second sound, nya sound, I-N-G, nya, sing. So the second sound is where the nose comes into play. So the air gets divided into these two passages, but not necessarily that in every sound the air will get divided. In some sounds, the air reaches only the mouth, and in some sounds, the air goes upward towards the nose. Now, if you notice the diagram, there is a portion which is dividing these two regions called the uvula. Uvula is the portion which is dividing the passage between the oral cavity and the nasal cavity. Now, if you notice carefully, the uvula is between these two passages. That means sometime, and that uvula is an organ which moves. So sometimes what happens, if the uvula is raised upward, if you notice the diagram carefully, if the uvula is raised upward, then what happens? It shuts the nasal cavity. That means then the entire air will have to follow only the path that is open, that is towards the mouth. Such sounds which are produced entirely by the air stream which comes from the mouth are called oral sounds, because in such a case the air stream has no scope to enter the nose. Now, whenever we are producing oral sounds, remember the uvula is raised, and the moment it rises, it touches the back part, the hind part, and as a result, the path towards the nose is shut, and the air has to follow only the path towards the mouth. And hence, the sounds produced are called oral sounds. And in some cases, the uvula may be lowered. Just like in the first case, the uvula was raised upward, because of which it was shutting the path towards the nose. In some case, the uvula may be lowered. As a result, what happens? The path towards the mouth is shut, and the entire air flows towards the nose, towards the nasal cavity. Can you understand? If the uvula is lowered, then it will touch the back of the tongue, and it will shut the entire passage for the air stream to flow towards the mouth. Hence, it has only one passage to follow, that is the path towards the nose. Such sounds which are produced by the air stream coming through the nose or the nasal cavity are called nasal sounds. Nasal sounds. Sounds which are only produced by the air stream coming through the nasal cavity. Right? Now, in some other case, like the picture is now, where both the paths are open, that means some of the air can enter the oral cavity and some part of the air stream will enter the nasal cavity. So when air will enter both the oral and the nasal cavity, such sounds which are produced when the uvula is at rest, as a result, it keeps both the passages open. Such sounds are called nasalized sounds. Nasalized, that means it is an oral sound, but it has a nasal influence. So nasalized sounds, N-A-S-A-L-I-Z-E-D. So students, you see, depending upon just the uvula, we have three kinds of sounds depending upon the movement of the uvula. If the uvula is raised, then the airstream flows towards the mouth and the sound produced is called oral sounds. If the uvula is lowered, then the airstream enters the nose and the sound produced is called nasal sound. And when the uvula is at rest, so the airstream enters both the oral cavity and the nasal cavity, the sounds produced are called nasalized sounds. Right? So like this, there are many other organs, as you can see. We will see how each part, each organ affects the sound system. Now we will come to articulators. Now these organs of speech, which are helping the airstream to produce the different kinds of sounds, these organs of speech are called articulators. So in phonetic terms, these organs are not simply called organs, but they are called articulators. Articulators, why? Because articulate means to produce speech sounds. Articulation means pronunciation. So articulate means to pronounce. So articulators are the organs which are helping us in producing speech sounds or to pronounce human words. So these organs of speech which are helping to transform the airstream into speech sounds are referred to as articulators. Now articulators can be of two types. That is, it can either be active articulators or it can be passive articulators. So active articulators are those organs which move during the production of speech sounds. Just think about your tongue when you are speaking. Definitely the tongue is moving. We cannot produce speech sounds, or we cannot speak keeping the tongue at rest. So the tongue and the lower lip. Why lower lip? Because the upper lip or the upper lip is joined to the upper jaw. And remember, upper jaw is fixed, it is not movable. It is the lower jaw that moves, and that is what makes the lower lip movable, right? So upper lip is constant. Active articulators are those organs which move during the production of speech sounds. For example, the tongue and the lower lip, because the lower lip is moving and touching the upper lip, or it even touches the teeth. And the tongue is definitely the best example of active articulator, because it definitely moves. Without the movement of the tongue and the lower lip, speech sounds cannot be produced, right? And second type is called passive articulators, and the passive articulators are those organs of speech that do not move during the speech sounds, during the production of speech sounds. So it's very easy to understand. Some organs are fixed and constant and they do not move. On the other hand, other organs are movable and they always change position during the production of speech sound. So those organs which are fixed are called passive articulators, they do not move. And those organs which are movable, they are called active articulators. Now passive articulators, example, teeth ridge. Teeth ridge is just the portion of the roof. If you just roll your tongue above the, means if you roll your tongue behind the teeth of your upper jaw, that portion of the hard palate is called the teeth ridge. If you will find that there is a rough surface portion behind the teeth of your upper jaw. If you roll your tongue, that portion is called the teeth ridge. Now definitely teeth ridge does not move, or the hard palate, the entire roof of the mouth, that means the upper jaw, the teeth of the upper jaw, the teeth ridge, the hard palate. The hard palate is just the portion behind the teeth ridge, then the soft palate, which is again behind the hard palate. So this entire roof of mouth remains fixed. They do not move, they cannot move. So they are passive articulators, right? Now, these organs of speech can be classified into three broad groups. There are many organs of speech. So all these organs of speech in detail we will be doing in the next class. But remember, overall, these can be classified into three groups. That is the respiratory system, which involve organs like lungs, muscles of the chest, and windpipe. The phonatory system, those which are actively participating, means they play an important role in producing speech sounds, that is larynx and the vocal cords, because without the vocal cords, speech sounds cannot be produced. That is why you will find that if you shout very loudly for some time, after that, your voice gets choked. Why? Because the vocal cords get affected. Then finally, we have the articulatory system, that is the nose, teeth, tongue, the roof of the mouth, lips, etc. Articulatory system refers to those organs which are in the mouth or the oral cavity. Phonatory system involves the voice box and the larynx, and the respiratory are those which are further below, that is lungs, muscles of chest. Now remember, whenever we are speaking, whenever we are producing speech sounds, whenever we are articulating, the airstream encounters all these organs, and together they play a very important role in producing speech sounds. Okay, so I'll not go any further today. We will stop here. In the next class, we will look deeper into the individual organs of speech. And I will suggest you again to go through, so that in case you don't understand anything, you can clear your doubts. Okay, that will be all for today. Thank you.